Today, we're going to unravel an absolutely incredible true story. It's about how one of the great novels of the 20th century, a beautiful, epic work of literature, was turned into an ideological weapon during one of the most dangerous times in modern history. So picture this. It's 1957. The world is basically split in two, locked in this tense, grinding conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union. And this isn't a hot war, right? It's a battle of ideas, fought with spies, with propaganda, and with shadows. And right in the middle of this high-stakes global chess match, a totally new and frankly unexpected weapon comes onto the scene. And it was designed for a completely different kind of fight, a fight for the hearts and minds of people. Now, this wasn't a nuclear weapon or some new piece of military tech. Its power wasn't about physical destruction at all. And no, it wasn't a human agent, a mole planted deep inside the Kremlin. Well, not in the usual sense, anyway. The weapon was a novel, Boris Pasternak's masterpiece, Dr. Zhivago. So how in the world did a story about a poet and a doctor get tangled up with the CIA and become a tool of psychological warfare? Well, let's get into it. To really understand why this book was seen as a weapon, we first have to talk about the man who wrote it and the so-called crime he committed just by writing it down. Okay, so what's so fascinating here is that Boris Pasternak wasn't some kind of radical outsider. Not at all. He was a pillar of the Soviet cultural world, a famous, beloved poet, celebrated for his amazing translations of Shakespeare. He wasn't your typical dissident, which makes what happened next even more shocking. So, what was the novel's big crime? Well, the Soviet state demanded that all art had to serve the state. They called it socialist realism. It was supposed to glorify the revolution, the collective, the whole shebang. Pasternak did the exact opposite. Dr. Zhivago didn't attack the system. It did something way worse in their eyes. It just ignored it. It was all about the inner life, the loves, the moral struggles of one person getting crushed by history. It was a celebration of individual freedom, and for a totalitarian state, that idea is pure poison. So when Pasternak submitted his manuscript to a Soviet journal back in 1956, the official response was, well, it was swift and it was brutal. Rejected, outright. The authorities called it politically harmful, ideologically unacceptable. They basically said that a story about an individual's soul had no place in the Soviet Union. But of course, the story doesn't end there. An Italian publisher who, get this, was also a communist, came to visit Pasternak in Moscow. And Pasternak, knowing his book would never see the light of day at home, made a decision that would change his life forever. He handed over the manuscript. And this is what he said to the publisher. Chilling, right? That one sentence tells you everything you need to know about the risk he was taking. He was literally betting his life that his art needed to be heard. Feltrinelli smuggled the book out, and in 1957, Dr. Zhivago was published in Italy. It became an instant international sensation. So the book is out, it's a huge bestseller. But for the Central Intelligence Agency, this was just the beginning. They saw a golden opportunity to use the Kremlin's own censorship against them. This declassified CIA memo pretty much says it all. The CIA got it. They understood that the best propaganda wasn't something they had to write themselves. See, the book's power wasn't that it praised America. It didn't. Its real power was that it was a great piece of Russian literature that the Soviet government was absolutely terrified of its own people reading. The ban itself was the message. Their plan was simple, clean, and really clever. They would secretly fund the printing of a Russian-language version, a small, pocket-sized one that was easy to hide. Then they'd use big international events, like the 1958 Brussels World's Fair, to just discreetly hand these books to Soviet visitors. The idea was they could then smuggle them back home. The most important rule, the CIA's fingerprints could be nowhere on this. They had to be a ghost. And then everything just exploded. In October 1958, Boris Pasternak won the Nobel Prize for Literature. The reaction from the Kremlin was volcanic. They denounced him as a traitor, kicked him out of the official writers' union, and even threatened to exile him. The pressure was so unbelievable that he was forced to turn down the most famous literary award in the world. This whole affair turned a book into a global political firestorm, and it perfectly showcased the very Soviet repression the CIA wanted to highlight. So all of this brings up a really critical question, doesn't it? With his novel being used as a Cold War weapon by a foreign spy agency, where did Pasternak himself stand on all of this? Was he in on the whole thing?
Let's just ask it straight up. Was the great Russian poet Boris Pasternak a CIA asset? Was he a collaborator in this whole covert plan?
And the answer, based on all the historical research we have, is a clear, unambiguous no. This was not a story of recruitment. It was a story of appropriation. Pasternak never, ever wanted his book to be a political football. His greatest dream was simply to see it published, legally, in his own country, for his own people. This international firestorm caused him incredible personal suffering. He spent his last years totally isolated, denounced by his friends, constantly watched by the state, and he died in 1960. He wasn't a soldier in the Cold War, he was a casualty of it. And look, this isn't just speculation or some wild theory. Decades of serious research by historians, people like Peter and Petra Couvée, all based on declassified documents, have confirmed the basic facts. The CIA absolutely did print and distribute the book. Their goal was a psychological one, and crucially, they used the book exactly as Pasternak wrote it. They didn't change a single word. So, after all the spy games and the political drama, what does this bizarre chapter of history really teach us? What's the real takeaway here? The real lesson isn't just a simple story about a spy agency manipulating books. It's actually something much deeper. This is a story about how authoritarian power reacts to real, authentic art. It shows us that censorship is a weapon that always backfires. But trying to silence one voice, the Soviet Union just made it echo all around the globe. Ultimately, what Dr. Zhivago proves is that in a system that's built on total control of thought, anything that celebrates the free, messy, unpredictable inner world of a person, anything that's just true to what it means to be human, is seen as a threat. In that world, even something as simple as beauty was dangerous. And maybe that's the final thought to leave you with. In the great clash of ideas, yeah, armies and missiles have their role, but sometimes the most powerful weapon of all is a paperback book passed quietly to a reader who's been told they're not allowed to read it.